I am Chelsea Barrett, 38, and literally last weekend, my role as the family's quiet supporter? Yeah, it totally backfired. The stability I'd worked my butt off to maintain for years? It blew up into a full-on family meltdown at our annual dinner in my parents' dining room. My parents and younger sister Tara straight up demanded I leave the house for good, calling me a failure who dragged them down. When I pushed back, voice shaking but firm, the room went dead silent. "You're a burden, Chelsea," my mother yelled, with Tara smirking and my father nodding like a judge. But here's the tea. Their cruelty didn't break me, it lit a spark. I'm not just pushing back, I'm about to flip the script and change everything. A quick note, this story is copyrighted by the YouTube channel Brim Revenge. Reposting, revoicing, or editing this content without permission constitutes copyright infringement. Thank you for respecting original creative work. Now, back to the story. The chandelier above the mahogany table buzzed faintly, casting jagged shadows on the cream wallpaper. I sat at the far end, my hands gripping the armrests of my chair, nails digging into the wood. My mother Ellen leaned forward, her pearl necklace clicking against her wine glass. "Chelsea, you're 38, still scraping by with odd jobs," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Tara's got her law firm, her life together. Why can't you?" Tara, across from me, twirled a lock of her perfect blonde hair, her eyes glinting with smug satisfaction. My father, Richard, didn't look up from his plate, but his silence screamed agreement. I tried to speak, to mention the freelance graphic design gigs I'd been grinding through, the clients I'd won despite no formal degree. But Tara cut me off. "Freelancing isn't a career, Chels, it's a hobby." Her laugh was a blade, and my mother's nod drove it deeper. I felt my throat tighten, my face burning as I stared at the untouched mashed potatoes on my plate. "We've decided," my father finally said, his voice low and final. "You need to move out. Tonight." My breath caught, my fingers curling into fists under the table. The room felt smaller, the air heavier, like I was drowning in their judgment. I stood, chair scraping, and grabbed my coat. Their eyes followed me, cold and unyielding, as I walked out the door, vowing to never let them define me again. The cold bit at my knuckles as I clutched my coat, trudging down the street away from the house that no longer felt like home. Memories clawed their way up, each one a reminder of how invisible I'd always been to them. I was 16 when I won the regional art contest, my painting of a storm-swept lighthouse displayed at the community center. I'd rushed home, certificate in hand, expecting at least a smile. Instead, my mother barely glanced up from her magazine. "That's nice, Chelsea," she'd said, then turned to Tara. "Tell me more about your debate team win, sweetheart." Tara's trophy got a spot on the mantle. My certificate stayed in my drawer. At 22, I'd saved up to take a design course, juggling 2 jobs to pay for it. I showed my father my first logo project, proud of the clean lines and bold colors. He'd pushed his glasses up, squinted, and said, "Tara's starting law school. That's real ambition." My chest ached as I remembered Tara's graduation party, the house filled with balloons and relatives toasting her future. I'd helped decorate, stringing up streamers while my mother gushed about Tara's scholarship. My own milestone, landing a contract with a local startup, wasn't even mentioned. I'd stood in the corner, holding a plastic cup of punch, smiling through the sting. Even last year, when I designed a website that got featured in a small online magazine, I emailed the link to my parents, no reply. But when Tara closed her first big case, they threw a dinner, clinking glasses to her bright future. I was there, refilling their wine, my own work a ghost in the room. Now, walking alone, my boots crunching on the gravel, I felt the weight of those moments. Each dismissal had built a quiet fire in me, one they couldn't see. My hands shook, not just from the cold but from the realization that I'd spent years chasing their approval, only to be tossed out like trash. I stopped under a streetlight, my breath visible in the chilly air, and whispered to myself, "No more." I didn't know how, but I'd make them see me, not for their love, but for my own worth. I stumbled into a 24-hour diner, my boots squeaking on the linoleum as I slid into a booth, the neon sign outside buzzing like my thoughts. My phone vibrated in my pocket, and I almost ignored it, assuming it was Tara gloating or Mom with more venom. But the number was unfamiliar. I answered, my voice hoarse. "Ms. Barrett?" a chipper voice said. "This is the State Lottery Commission. You've won $4.2 million from last week's draw. My heart stopped. I gripped the edge of the table, the chipped formica grounding me as the words sank in. Are you serious? I whispered, my pulse hammering. The woman laughed, confirming details I barely heard. Ticket number, claim process. I hung up, staring at the ketchup bottle in front of me, its red blur mirroring the chaos in my head. I'd bought that ticket on a whim, $1 tossed at a gas station counter when I stopped for coffee. I never checked it. Too caught up in dodging bills and family barbs. Now this? My hands trembled as I pulled the crumpled ticket from my wallet, its numbers suddenly sacred. I laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound that made the waitress glance over. This money wasn't just cash, it was freedom, a chance to rewrite my life. I imagined a new apartment, a real design studio, maybe even a trip somewhere warm where no one knew my name. But the high faded as I thought of my family's faces, their smug certainty I'd never amount to anything. They didn't know. They couldn't. I tucked the ticket back into my wallet, my fingers brushing the worn leather. The diner's jukebox kicked on, some old country song about starting over, and I felt a spark of something fierce. This win was mine, a secret I'd guard like armor. I wouldn't run back to them, waving it like a trophy. No, I'd build something they couldn't touch. My coffee arrived, steam curling up, and I wrapped my hands around the mug, letting the warmth steady me. The lottery was my turning point, but it wasn't the end. I'd show them what I could do, not by shouting, but by living better than they ever imagined. The next morning, I sat in a cheap motel room, the kind with scratchy sheets and a flickering lamp, staring at my phone. The annual family dinner was tonight, and despite everything, I'd promised to show up months ago. My thumb hovered over the decline button on Mom's reminder text, but something stubborn in me refused to press it. I'd go, not to beg for their love but to face them one last time before my new life began. I didn't know about the trust fund yet, or their house teetering on foreclosure. Those bombshells were still hidden, waiting to explode. All I knew was the $4.2 million sitting in my future, a secret I hugged close as I packed my one good dress. I spent the day pacing, my sneakers wearing a path in the motel's thin carpet. My mind churned. Part of me wanted to walk into that dining room and scream about the lottery, watch their jaws drop. But no, that'd be too easy. I zipped up my bag, my fingers brushing the lottery ticket tucked in a side pocket, its edges already softening from my constant checking. The weight of last night's disowning still pressed on my chest, each memory of their words like a bruise. I caught my reflection in the smudged mirror, dark circles under my eyes, but a spark in them too. I wasn't broken. Not yet. By evening I was driving to my parents' house, the familiar oak-lined street tightening my stomach. The house loomed, its white shutters pristine, hiding their financial rot. I parked, my hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. I stepped out, smoothing my dress, the black fabric feeling like armor. The doorbell chimed, and I braced myself, my breath shallow. Whatever happened tonight, I'd walk out with my head high. I didn't need their approval anymore. I had my own power, waiting to be claimed. The door swung open, and Mom's tight smile greeted me, her eyes already scanning for flaws. I stepped into the dining room, the familiar scent of roasted chicken and lavender air freshener hitting me like a wave. The table was set with Mom's heirloom china, each plate gleaming under the chandelier's glow. Tara sat across from me, her silk blouse catching the light, her smile sharp as she sipped her wine. Dad was at the head, his tie perfectly knotted, eyes fixed on his phone. Mom bustled in with a platter, her voice syrupy as she said, "Chelsea, so glad you could make it." Her tone dripped with pity, and I felt my jaw tighten, my fingers curling around the napkin in my lap. The conversation started innocently enough, Mom asking about Tara's latest case, Dad nodding proudly. Then it turned. "Chelsea, still doing those little art projects?" Tara asked, her eyebrow arched, the word art twisted like an insult. I swallowed, forcing a smile. "Freelance design, actually. Just finished a big client website." She smirked, glancing at Mom. "Oh, websites. Cute. Must be nice to have so much free time." My cheeks burned, but I kept my eyes on my plate, pushing a carrot around with my fork. Dad cleared his throat. Tara's firm just landed a major corporate client. Real stability there. The comparison hung in the air, heavy as the gravy Mom spooned onto his plate. Every question was a jab, every compliment backhanded. You're so independent, Mom said, her lips pursed as if independence was a disease. I gripped my glass, the stem cool against my palm, and took a slow sip to steady myself. Their words piled up, each one a stone pressing on my chest. I wanted to scream about the lottery, to shatter their smugness, but I bit my tongue. Not yet. I glanced at the clock above the mantel, barely 7 p.m. This was just the start, and I could feel the air thickening, their judgment coiling tighter around me. I straightened in my chair, my spine rigid, ready for whatever came next. The clink of silverware slowed as Mom set down her fork, her eyes narrowing like she was aiming a dart. "Chelsea," she said, voice low but deliberate. "We've been talking as a family." My stomach twisted, the mashed potatoes turning to lead in my mouth. Tara leaned back, arms crossed, her lips twitching into a half smile. Dad finally looked up from his phone, his face carved with disappointment. I braced myself, my fingers digging into the edge of my chair, the wood biting into my palms. "You've had years to figure things out," Mom continued, "but you're still drifting. We can't keep supporting you." Her words landed like a slap, sharp and final. Tara chimed in, her voice dripping with false pity. "It's not personal, Chels. You're just not contributing. We need space for our priorities." I stared at her, my pulse hammering in my ears. "Contributing?" I managed, my voice cracking. "I've been here, helping with everything, bills, errands, this house." Dad shook his head, cutting me off. "It's not enough. You're a burden, Chelsea. It's time you leave. For good." The word burden echoed, slicing through the last threads of hope I'd clung to. My vision blurred, but I blinked hard, refusing to let tears fall in front of them. Mom slid a folded piece of paper across the table, an eviction notice, typed and formal, like I was a tenant, not their daughter. My hands shook as I picked it up, the paper crinkling in my grip. "Tonight?" I whispered, glancing at the clock. Tara nodded, her eyes cold. "We've packed your things? They're in the garage?" The room spun, their faces blurring into a wall of rejection. I stood, my chair scraping loudly, and walked to the door, my steps heavy but steady. I didn't look back, even as their silence followed me like a shadow. The front door clicked shut behind me, and I stood in the driveway, the night air cold against my burning face, their betrayal a weight I'd carry, but not for long. I stood in the driveway, the eviction notice crumpled in my fist, the gravel crunching under my boots as I fought to breathe. The night was sharp, stars hidden by clouds, and my chest felt like it was caving in. Then my phone buzzed, slicing through the haze. I fumbled it out of my pocket, hands still shaking, and saw the same unfamiliar number from last night. "Miss Barrett, it's the Lottery Commission again," the voice said, calm but urgent. "We need to confirm your claim process for the $4.2 million. Can you come to our office tomorrow?" My knees buckled and I leaned against my car, the cold metal grounding me. "Tomorrow," I echoed, voice barely audible. The call ended and I clutched the phone like a lifeline. The weight of their words, burden, failure, still burned, but this was a lightning bolt, splitting my despair in two. I slid into my car, the leather seat creaking, and stared at the dashboard. $4.2 million. It was real, not a dream. My fingers brushed the lottery ticket in my purse, its edges worn from my obsessive checks. I laughed, a raw, shaky sound, as tears finally broke free, streaking down my cheeks. Not tears of defeat, relief maybe, or defiance. I pictured Mom's tight smile, Tara's smirk, Dad's cold nod. They thought they'd crushed me, but they'd just handed me the key to a new world. I turned the ignition, the engine's hum steadying my pulse. The house loomed in my rearview mirror, its lights glowing like a lie. I didn't need it anymore. I drove toward the motel, my mind racing with possibilities, a new apartment, a proper design studio, a life where I answered to no one. The road stretched dark ahead, but for the first time it felt like it was leading somewhere. My hands gripped the wheel, knuckles white, not from fear but from a fire I hadn't felt in years. They'd pushed me out, but I was about to rise higher than they could ever imagine. The motel room's thin walls did little to muffle the hum of the highway as I sat on the edge of the bed, the lottery confirmation email glowing on my phone. My mind churned, replaying the dinner, their cold dismissal, but a new memory surfaced, something Tara said last year about Grandpa's estate. "He left you nothing, Chelsea," she'd smirked, but her eyes had flickered, avoiding mine. I'd brushed it off then, but now, with their betrayal fresh, it gnawed at me. I grabbed my laptop, fingers flying as I searched old emails and family records. Buried in a forgotten folder was a scanned letter from Grandpa's lawyer, mentioning a trust fund in my name, $200,000 meant for me at 35. My breath caught. I was 38. They'd hidden it. My hands shook as I dialed the lawyer's number, my voice steady despite the rage bubbling inside. "Ms. Barrett," he confirmed, "your family claimed you'd waived your rights. The funds are still there, untouched." I gripped the phone, my nails digging into my palm. They'd lied, stolen what was mine to keep me small. I thanked him, hung up, and paced the room, my footsteps thudding on the worn carpet. The lottery was my freedom. This was my proof. Their hypocrisy laid bare. I wouldn't confront them directly, not yet. I needed something bigger, something they couldn't dodge. I sat back down, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Their faces flashed in my mind. Mom's fake smile, Tara's smug tilt, Dad's silent judgment. I wasn't the failure they'd painted. I opened a new tab, searching for their house's status, and found it. A foreclosure notice, public and humiliating. They'd kept that secret too. My lips curled into a grim smile. I'd walk away from their lies, but not before making sure the truth followed them. I closed my laptop, my resolve hardening like steel. They'd tried to erase me, but I was about to rewrite the story. I woke up the next morning, the motel's stale coffee barely cutting through my haze, and drove to meet my friend Lena at her cozy apartment downtown. The contrast to last night's dinner hit me hard as I stepped inside. Warm light spilled from fairy lights strung along her bookshelves, and the smell of fresh-baked cookies replaced the sterile lavender of my parents' house. Lena hugged me tight, her curls brushing my cheek, and I felt my shoulders loosen for the first time in days. "You okay, Chels?" she asked, her brown eyes searching mine as she handed me a mug. I nodded, sinking into her couch, the soft cushions a small comfort against the ache in my chest. I told her everything, the disowning, the lottery, the trust fund lie. Her jaw dropped, then tightened as she slammed her mug down, tea sloshing. "They hid your inheritance? That's low, even for them." I traced the rim of my mug, my fingers steady, but my voice raw. "They wanted me gone, Lena, but I'm not nothing." She grabbed my hand, squeezing hard. "You're everything, and you've got us." Her roommate, Marco, popped in, offering a plate of cookies and a grin. "Team Chelsea, always." We laughed, the sound light but real, and for a moment I felt seen. Not for what I could do, but for who I was. As we talked, my phone pinged with an email from the lawyer confirming the trust fund transfer. I stared at the numbers, my heart racing. Lena leaned over, whistling. "Girl, you're building an empire now." I smiled, but my mind was already elsewhere, on the foreclosure notice, on the house they loved more than me. I didn't tell Lena my plan yet. It felt too raw, too big. But sitting there, surrounded by people who chose me, I felt a shift. My family's betrayal had cut deep, but these allies were my anchor, proof I didn't need blood to have a home. Back in my motel room, the hum of the air conditioner filled the silence as I opened my laptop, the foreclosure notice for my parents' house still up on the screen. My fingers hovered over the keys, heart pounding as I contacted a real estate agent through a secure anonymous email. "Interested in purchasing 1427 Oakwood Lane," I typed, my hands steady despite the fire in my chest. The house, my family's pride, the stage for their cruelty, was weeks from being seized. They'd hidden their financial ruin from me, just like the trust fund. Now, I'd turn their lie into my leverage. The agent replied quickly, unaware of my identity, confirming I could buy it outright with my lottery fund. I wired the deposit, my jaw tight as I imagined their faces when they learned the truth. I leaned back, the motel's lumpy mattress creaking under me. My phone sat beside me, its screen dark but heavy with possibility. I'd found an old voicemail from Tara on my cloud drive last night, recorded months ago when she thought I wasn't listening. "Chelsea's clueless about the trust fund," she'd said, laughing with Mom in the background. "She'll never know." I'd saved it, my thumb brushing the play button now, their voices a cold reminder of their betrayal. That recording would be my weapon, but not yet. I needed the house first. The agent sent a contract, and I signed it digitally, my alias a shield. The purchase would close quietly, no fanfare, no trace back to me. I stood, pacing the room, my sneakers scuffing the carpet. My family thought they'd erased me, but I was rewriting the rules. The house wasn't just brick and mortar, It was their identity, their superiority. Owning it gave me power, not to gloat, but to set the stage for their reckoning. I stopped at the window, staring at the parking lot's flickering lights, my reflection sharp in the glass. This was my new boundary, my first step toward a life they couldn't touch. The morning of the live broadcast, I sat in a rented office downtown, the hum of the city filtering through the window as I finalized my plan. My laptop screen glowed with an email from a local news producer, confirming they'd received my anonymous tip and the voicemail recording. I'd sent it last night, my fingers trembling as I attached the file. Tara's voice, smug and clear, admitting they'd hidden my trust fund, with Mom's laughter punctuating the betrayal. The producer had jumped at the story, a family's deceit exposed, tied to their looming foreclosure. I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking, my heart racing but steady. This wasn't revenge, it was truth, sharp and undeniable. I drove to the news station, parking across the street, my hoodie pulled low to blend into the crowd gathering for the noon segment. The host, a woman with a crisp blazer and sharper questions, introduced the story on a massive outdoor screen. "A shocking family secret," she said, as my parents and Tara appeared, live in the studio, their faces tight with forced smiles. The recording played, Tara's voice echoing, "Chelsea's clueless, she'll never know." Mom's laugh followed, brittle and damning. The crowd gasped, and I saw Dad's hand clench on the table, Tara's eyes widening in panic. The host pressed them, relentless. "You concealed a $200,000 trust fund from your daughter?" Mom stammered, her pearl necklace glinting as she shifted. Tara tried to deflect, but the host cut her off, revealing the foreclosure notice next. My phone buzzed, a text from the real estate agent confirming the house was now mine. I exhaled, my fingers brushing the keys in my pocket. The crowd murmured, some shaking their heads, others whispering. I didn't need to speak. The truth did it for me. My dignity wasn't in their shock. It was in knowing I'd exposed their lies without lowering myself to their level. I turned away, the screen's glow fading behind me, my steps light as I walked toward a future I'd built alone. I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, the city skyline glittering below, a glass of iced tea sweating in my hand. The air was warm, carrying the hum of distant traffic, and for the first time in years my chest didn't feel tight. The news broadcast from yesterday replayed in my mind. Tara's stammer, Mom's flushed cheeks, Dad's silence as their lies unraveled on live TV. I'd watched from the crowd unseen, my heart steady as the truth did its work. Owning their house, now leased to new tenants, wasn't about gloating, it was about closing a door they'd forced open. I sipped my tea, the glass cool against my lips, and let the moment settle. I thought back to the girl who'd sat at their table, shrinking under their barbs, desperate for a nod of approval. She was gone. The lottery, the trust fund, the house. They were tools, not my worth. My worth was in the late nights I'd spent teaching myself design, the clients I'd won through grit, the friends like Lena who saw me when my family didn't. I set the glass down, my fingers tracing the balcony's iron railing, its rough texture grounding me. I didn't need their validation anymore. I'd found it in the life I was building, in the quiet certainty that I was enough. The sun dipped low, painting the sky orange, and I smiled, a real one, not the forced kind I'd worn for years. My phone buzzed with a text from Marco. "Proud of you, Chels. Dinner soon?" I typed back, "Absolutely," my heart light. The peace wasn't in their downfall. It was in knowing I'd risen without them. I'd reclaimed my story not by sinking to their level, but by standing taller than they ever expected. Have you ever had to walk away from people who didn't see your worth? That's where I was, 38 and starting over, but stronger for it. I didn't just expose my family's lies or buy their house. I found peace in knowing my value doesn't come from them. It's in the work I do, the friends who lift me up, the life I'm building. So what do you think? Did I take it far enough or not far enough? Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Have you ever had to cut ties to find yourself? Share your story, I'd love to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about reclaiming your power. Keep rising, keep shining, and know that you are enough.